There, Buttercups. So I'm kind of excited today to talk about our topic of the week, friendship. I know you're probably going to sigh and say, friendship? Really? But I thought it was appropriate considering that last week we talked about fried green tomatoes. And that movie is chock full of friendship and loyalty and love. So, one of the cool things about Friends is that really friends are our chosen family because we do choose them for ourselves, for better, for worse. And, some people say that true friends are like diamonds. I'd like to think that my friends are not diamonds, but different precious gems that you just don't find, well, just everywhere. So, there are obviously levels and tiers of friendship. But we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. Okay, guys? So the first ones we have are our acquaintances. See, what I like about acquaintances is that this has potential to be so much more, and you don't really know. You kind of meet someone, you feel out their vibe, and say, I could dig this, or nah, I don't dig this. But that being said, you have the potential. It's like platonic dating, which is the only kind of dating I do recently. But I mean, how I couldn't even tell you how to make friends. People could say, "Hey, how do you make your friends?" I don't know. I think we all just started talking one day and eventually we just kept talking and it just never stopped. Probably a good reason I'm doing this podcast, but I digress. So, we have our acquaintances. Great, great people. And then you move on to the what I want to call work friends. Because the work friends can be so much more than just people you know at work. That could actually evolve into close friends, if I'm being honest, which is the next level. So, work friends, and it's wild. Y'all, it's just wild. You could be, I was 20, I was in my mid 20s. And one of my best work friends, y'all, she was my mama's age. I still talk to her. She's not someone that I would ever give up, and I'll be honest with you. She was a New York Chihuahua. You did not mess with her. She told you what she thought. And when I tell you, whoo, no, even, yeah, no, trust me, I love her to death. She was like my work mom and my work friend, and I absolutely adored her. I still adore her. She lives, well, she moved away to a different state, but she's doing great things now. Uh, and even in my current, job, I have, some great work friends that I kind of would consider close friends because they know a lot about me and they support me and cheer me on. And guys, that is awesome because truthfully, it's hard to find people who will support you, especially in the workplace, but in general in life. But they're awesome. And truthfully, I would consider them close friends. Now, do we discuss much outside? Much, no. But I mean, I give it time. I give it time. So, close friends. Close friends are people that you talk to, that a good amount about, that you see them and it feels like time hasn't passed by, and that's fantastic. Because those are people you need as well, because you there's different stages of your life where you have those people. And that's really cool because you could literally just drop by and say, "Hey, I'm here. What's up?" And you sit down and talk for several hours while you play with their kittens and the two dogs, drool on you, which I'm all down for because I'm a dog person and a cat person. So, like, that's just me. And then I'm sure I'm missing some levels here, and y'all can tell me if I am. But then you have the best friends. Now, I am very, very blessed to say that my second best friend from fifth grade and I still talk. Now, obviously, life has gone a little bit different than we anticipated, but that I still consider her my best friend. That girl knew me from fifth grade up until probably high school. And honestly, the way we met was great, and I would never condone this. But apparently, we became friends because of our mutual shared love of Patrick Swayze and horses. Apparently, I convinced her that I knew Patrick Swayze because I had horses and gave her an autograph. Her mother knew better. I'm sure my mother would have known better too. I feel kind of bad about that now, but hey, we moved on from it. um, but then you have friends who span, dang, fifth grade. Wait. Now y'all got me thinking. Fifth grade. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a long time. Um, but then you have the best friends that you meet as you're transforming from like preteen to teenager and then teenager to adult. And that's where it kind of gets tricky, in my opinion, because you start with, say, a bigger group. Let's say a group of, I don't know, five. Well, eventually, that group of five dwindles down to like a group of three, which is fine because everybody has, their own paths to take and they have their own decisions to make. So, like, no hard feelings, right? But it's something that's interesting that everybody that I would consider one of my best friends has a different, has several different or a different aspect to which I can relate. And that to me is really cool because when you get all these people in one room, which I have done, by the way, um, you pretty much are now seeing all the little bits of you scattered around and they're all entertaining themselves and talking and it's like, oh, okay. Kind of like instead of all like little, I don't know how many of you watch The Big Bang Theory, but if you did, I need you to recall the episode where there's the Council of Sheldons, and there's all the different types of Sheldon in a council, and he's trying to make a decision, right? That's what I picture in my head. I know, I am what I am. I'm sure other people do this too. But that being said, it's like, oh, everybody here gets along. That's cool. Because the wonderful thing is, you have the ones that support you when you think that maybe an idea is not like the best thing, the nicest thing to do. But what do? They say, hey, I got you. Let's do it at my house. And I'm going to cook for the occasion because I want to cook for you anyways. All right, cool. And then you have the ones that, yeah, you have, life gets in the way. Life gets busy. You have a busy home life. But when you can sit down and talk to them, they honestly, they make that time for you. But in turn, you make that time for them. It's just as simple as sitting down after they come home from a long day. Their kids are running around trying to, I don't know, eavesdrop on the conversation because they're kids and that's okay. We did it too. Um, but you sit down, you talk, and you just kind of you're in their environment, you're in their home. So what do? You adapt. You adapt. That's what you do. And then the great thing is that those kids can see that that's what friends do. You have to slightly adapt to the environment of your friends, you know? Or you have the friends that you're total opposites. Like that is an opposites attract kind of situation. You don't have the same type in men, in food, in um, music, and anything. But you do agree on the things that matter. See, those types of friends, and especially friendships that last at least 20 years, you watch each other grow up. You watch each other break the shells that you were in, and you grow up and out of that shell, from the person who can't order a drink to the person who speaks their mind, which is fantastic because you have now seen them go full circle. They're no longer that person who can't speak up for themselves, and you love it because in that instance, you're proud of them, even if it's against you, right? And then, as with life, problems will arise in every single kind of friendship you might have. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that our friendships will always end when these problems arise, but you do have to work through them. As I've gotten older, I have realized that you just can't say what's on your mind in that moment completely. Sometimes you have to step back, evaluate what's being said to you, and make sure that you were doing the right thing, or, check yourself before you go off on somebody. Speak before you think, before you speak, basically. And, a lot of people will have huge fights with their friends a lot of the times. And sometimes you can have two fights in 20 years and not talk for 6 months of those 20 years, right? But that's cool. Because the thing is that you don't have to agree with everything that your friend says. Um, it doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you hate them. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you need to figure out how to best navigate the situation. Because sometimes our emotions of current situations do get the best of us. But there are friendships that you do kind of have to say, you know what, I can't do this because you're never going to change. And the thing is that you don't look. I know a lot of people who just say, I didn't want to be right. And they're not being egotistical about it. They're not being facetious. They're being honest. And sometimes that's just the fact. Sometimes you watch someone do the same thing to new people and everything, and it's very, very obvious that they're just not going to change. And the thing is that you can't blame yourself for how they are. Life and their circumstances and their personalities also play a part. I don't think it would ever be fair to say to somebody, to say comments, disparaging comments about something, about death. Let's just say death, okay? Because the thing is that that's not cool. It's very unfair. It's not, the world does not revolve around one person or, even in your life, I need you to have main character energy. I promise you that. But the supporting characters, they're there for a reason. Do not discourage and be like, oh, well, they're just, no. Now, because some friendships do end, you kind of look back and honestly, it sometimes life pulls us and pulls us into a spot we didn't even know was there. I have a friend who I met through one person, but found out I had a second connection through a former best friend. The only difference was that they knew them after I did. And spoiler alert, that person didn't change, right? And turns out that this friend also knows one of my family members. Now, me and this friend were not supposed to meet. And I have told this friend, like, there's probably a good reason. Because I am not the person that I was. I am not the person that I was. And that's okay because we all grow, we all, mature. And it took me, 36 years to be able to be the way I am, for better, for worse. That being said, you aren't who you are, who you were in high school, that person is long gone. Because the fact is that at 18, 15, 17, 16, whatever, y'all, you don't know who you are or what you want or how you're going to do it. Nothing. Nada. Zip. Okay? And it, so thanks to Facebook, my graduating class has commented multiple times in the last, say, 10 years. Oh, we should have a reunion. We should have a reunion. We should have a reunion. I agree. But no one has done anything or doesn't have time, or it's just never become a thing to plan. But I realized that my graduating class is officially an adult this year. And I was chatting with one of my best friends recently when her daughter asked us what high school was like. And I'm going to be honest, this brought back eye rolls and laughter and cringing. Now, I was more of a quiet kid. Doesn't mean I didn't do stupid stuff. I can assure you I did. But I thought it was right at the time. I mean, I don't think I would do it again, but I didn't know any better. And I'm sure nobody else did in high school. And so we just told her basically in a nutshell that you just need to go in, be yourself, find, do what makes you happy, and then try and enjoy the good parts and don't let the bad parts really just, how do I say it? Cloud the situation, if you will. But this led me to wonder further about what would you do if you met the people that you went to high school with the maturity level you have now versus then. If you went through the same experiences, right, but you had more of a, hey, this is what I shouldn't do, and this is what I know. Now, I have accomplished a lot in the last 18 years, but I have still fallen back into the awkwardness of being 18-year-old me in times that I have met up with people from my graduating class. I won't blame them. It wasn't on them. It was basically when you just can't help it. Now, granted, I was in a toxic, stressful situation, but you kind of hope that when you meet somebody that you kind of knew and you just like, oh, just being cordial and stuff, you can do better. I hope I do better if that cares again. I do feel bad. I mean, but it is what it is. So I'm curious, have any of you experienced this type of situation where you meet someone from your high school class, your school years, and now as adults you get along because you have different life experiences? If you did, how did it go? I'd love to know so I can actually share some of those stories. Just let me know what information you want me to, share on the podcast, name, etc., that good stuff. But I would love to share those stories. So you can email me at Hark, tis the Teabelle at gmail.com. But I'll definitely put that in the show notes. Yes. I couldn't let this episode go by without at least naming some and talking about some of the very popular and maybe not so known friendships, whether fictional or famous. So we're going to start with the obvious, Lucy and Ethel from I Love Lucy. Y'all, it's the same as having a Thelma to your Louise. You just have to. You really just have to. There's absolutely nothing you can do. They supported each other through the shenanigans, through everything. And yeah, they did fight, but they always made up and always, always talked things through. That's one of the things about friendship that you really have to have is the willingness to talk things through, because if not, what's the point of it? I mean, look at Joey and Chandler on Friends. They did the shenanigans, right? They did all the things, but they lasted as friends. Meredith and Christina on Grey's Anatomy. I mean, come on, guys. Look at Timon and Pumbaa. How do you not support your friend when he has, to fart? And obviously, you have your higher class friends with Cher and Dion on Clueless. Yes, I say higher class because, in their minds they were higher class, but they were genuinely good people. And let's not forget about Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's franchise, okay? Now, some more popular ones that, probably seem a little bit unexpected would be Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. And you know what? To each their own. I'm not a huge Martha Stewart fan, but for those of you who are, I mean, it's cool that two such different people could be just good friends, best friends. Look at Helen Mirren and Vin Diesel. Apparently, they met on the set of 2018's Fate of the Furious, and they just had chemistry. Helen Mirren told People, "The most random people just have chemistry, and I adored Vin from the moment I met him." That makes sense. I think he'd be cool. And Martha Stewart told People, "When you work with someone like Snoop, it's like having a sidekick. How great it is. That's why all the comedians have sidekicks and bands, because it loosens them up and lets them be freer. Snoop is my freedom." So, I mean, there's so many interesting ones that, like 50 Cent and Bette Midler. Yeah, I said that correctly. Apparently, Bette reached out to 50 Cent, whose real name is Curtis James Jackson III, back in 2008 for some fundraising advice. The songstress told People that she quote, "I called and nagged him. His G Unity Foundation gives $1 million away each year in grants to nonprofits all over the city. They're just brilliant. He's really made my life worth living," she told the New York Daily News a year later, adding that Jackson had, quote, "been with me through thick and thin." I mean, it's honestly not surprising to see so many different types of people being friends. You know why? Because different people vibe, age, everything, none of that matters. It's just how you vibe with different people. Now, we have those fun ones. And there are some, such as, where opposites attract, like a Mr. Bingley and a Mr. Darcy. Because you gotta have that. You can't have two people the same way. But sometimes it's beneficial to each person in the friendship when you have people that, well, they're opposites. Because you have someone who wants to burn the world down, but then you have the other person who convinces them just to nag and do something less, well, burning the world down. And I'm not saying actual burning the world down. I'm saying metaphorically burning the world down and just crushing somebody. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Low key petty versus the outright, petty. But there are some friendships that bettered the world in different ways, such as Mark Twain and Nikola Tesla. This friendship bridged the worlds of literature and science, where Twain's support and admiration for Tesla's work actually helped promote the revolutionary ideas, including advancements in electricity. And this is all according to Hindustan Times. It was an article published on August 3rd of 2024 by Lifestyle. And they were discussing Friendship Day of 2024. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had a friendship despite their political differences and their correspondence, and they both served as presidents. And they both offered invaluable insights into the American Revolution and the early years of the U.S. Marie Curie and Albert Einstein, their friendship was based on mutual respect for each other, for the other's scientific achievements, and their collaboration and support of each other's work advanced the fields of physics and chemistry. Sometimes working with somebody else can actually advance you in a way that you never knew could happen. And then there's Franklin D. Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. You know those two, right? Well, their friendship was crucial to an Allied victory in World War II. Their strong personal bond facilitated close cooperation and strategic planning, and that was pivotal in defeating the Axis powers. And then you have Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton's friendship. So this was really pivotal for women's suffrage in the United States because working together laid the groundwork for the eventual passage of the 19th Amendment, which granted the women right to vote. Holy moly. And then just to kind of a fun one, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's friendship, that was a creative environment that led to the creation of the landmark The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, and Lewis is The Chronicles of Narnia. For for the people out there, for all those who say, "Hey, those are my jams," that right there, they're getting together as friends was why. Okay. Now, some of the fun ones, you have Woody and Buzz from Toy Story, where they were honest with each other. And one of the great things is that when you have a friend, sometimes your friend is not always going to make the decision that's best for themselves, or maybe they don't know how, or I don't know, there's something. But sometimes one of you is the voice of reason. And maybe there's one that's always the voice of reason, and maybe sometimes the voice of reason changes. And truly, that is the loveliness of being in a friendship. Because if you think about it, you can change, you can grow, and if you can do that in a safe environment with somebody, that's fantastic. Sometimes those people can be so important in your life that it leads to a friendship of 40 plus years and basically a member of the family. So at this point, guys, who are you and your best friend like? Are you Iggy and Ruth? Are you Timon and Pumbaa? Are you a Mr. Darcy and a Mr. Bingley? What about Shaggy and Scooby? Who are you? Let me know. Let me know the stories. I will love to share them. And, just tell me the names you want to use. Because that, my friends, is what friendship is about. Sharing the stories, sharing your experiences, supporting each other, loving each other, listening to each other, and just being there when you need somebody in their own way. What if you were given the chance to see yourself through another's eyes? You could pick the person, but you were able to see what they see. Would you do it? Speaking for myself, I would be interested only if I could see where that person was coming from, if that makes sense. So if it was someone who I was similar to, it would be easier to understand what they see. Whereas if it was somebody who had an irrational dislike of me, where are they coming from? What is the issue? And by understanding where they're coming from, that would make it a little easier for me to be able to do this. I would have to get a thicker skin though, because I am pretty sure I wouldn't like some of the things or some of the views I think I would get. But I also think I'd get a lot of good ones. I hope. And the idea that some people out there, if they did this, their feelings would be really hurt because they are definitely not the person they think they are, and they would finally figure it out. But I digress. Would I? Yes, as long as I could see from their point of view and try to understand why they saw me that way. I pulled today's Petty Corner from Reddit under the subreddit Petty Revenge. The user Erica Renee XOXO 2 years ago said, "Petty not so petty revenge on a friend who took me for granted." The post starts with, "I'm sorry this is so long. I'll make it as short as possible. This friend is someone I've known for at least 7 years. He was basically family to me up until now. This guy does nothing to benefit himself and thinks everything should be handed to him. When someone disagrees with him or he doesn't get his way, he throws a hissy fit." I know people like that. "Hasn't had a job in 2 years and he's 25. Not because he can't work, just because he doesn't want to. Constantly asks people for everything, etc. So, long story short, I've, 22F, literally done nothing but be a good friend to him. Let him stay with me even though he destroyed my house. That's a whole other story. Tried to get him several jobs he wouldn't take, and all he did was lie about me and badmouth me to our other friends. The last straw was really when I got him a job for the billionth time where I was starting. And he ruined it. Even told him I'd drive him half the days, and our mutual friend would do the other half. He doesn't drive either, of course. And he acted like he was really going to do it this time. Around this time, he lived with our mutual friend. I had asked said friend if he was home a couple days before orientation, and he said, "Yeah, but we all have COVID." He doesn't, but he's still in the house with us. So I said, "Well, he shouldn't go to orientation, and I sure am not taking him because I can't afford to get sick." Mind you, I was never asked to take him in the first place. I had a feeling the message was never relayed, so I messaged another mutual friend whom said he would take him if he had to go. Flash forward to the night before orientation day. He messages me asking for a ride to orientation. I said very politely, "I spoke to blank a few days ago, and he said everyone but you in the house have COVID. Y'all are around each other, so I don't feel comfortable taking you, and I don't even think you should go. I did find you another ride, though, anyway." He immediately starts losing it, telling me I'm a Karen and a baby and scared for nothing and a shit friend and to never talk to him, blah, blah, blah. I'm ruining his chance at a job, you know. I found him a ride when I wasn't even obligated to do because it wasn't my responsibility. And he was really about to risk everyone's health too because according to him, quote, I don't have symptoms, so I can't pass it. End quote. All I did was tell him, I'm sorry, I have to put my health first. I don't have health insurance, and I won't be the reason people at work get sick. A lot of older people work here. Whatever he does is on him. He didn't stop berating me, though, and ruined our friendship over a single ride that I got him with someone else. So he had to ride to work regardless, but it was just had to be me, I guess. He also threatened me, quote, don't let me see you, end quote, etc. So the day of orientation, I got there early and I told his hiring manager he had COVID and showed him the messages of how shitty he was. Hearing him walk into the orientation room just for them to say he had to leave was the best thing ever. He was also 30 minutes late, which made him look even worse. Needless to say, he didn't get the job and hasn't talked to me since. LOL. Good riddance. Maybe next time you'll take some responsibility and not treat your friends like shit. Yeah, that seems fair. And you know what? First of all, don't give people COVID. And this was 2 years ago, so 2023. But besides that, you're not that entitled, my dude. So the top comment I see is, I'm glad you got rid of him. Don't worry, he'll alienate the rest of the people in your friend circle soon enough. By storms underscore and underscore rainbows. And OP actually responds, oh yeah, not long after, the mutual friend he lived with kicked him out because he wasn't holding his end of the bargain. What is wrong with people? Don't give people COVID. Don't get people sick. Don't be a jerk. This person, OP, went out of her way to find you a ride, and you're 3 years older. Why are you acting like such a 5-year-old? Congratulations, the 5-year-old at the table over there having a tantrum is proud of you. Good job. AITA for telling my best friend I don't want to be her, quote, backup, end quote, friend anymore, question mark. I, female 19, have been best friends with Sarah, female 19, since middle school. We used to be super close, FaceTime every night, hang out every weekend, talk about everything. But ever since we started college, we are at different schools. Things have changed. She's made a new friend group, and honestly, I'm happy for her. But it's like she only texts me when they're busy or she's having drama with them. I'll try to make plans and get left on red, but suddenly when her new friends are, quote, toxic, or she's bored, she remembers I exist. Last weekend, she called crying about one of them ditching her. I comforted her like always, but then she said, I'm so glad I still have you, my backup bestie. I froze. I don't think she meant it in a mean way, but it stung. The next day, I texted her and said that I felt like I was just a second choice to her now, and I didn't want to keep being a backup friend. She got super defensive and said I was being dramatic and selfish, and now she's ghosting me completely. My mom says I should have just ignored the comment and been there for her, but I feel like I finally stuck for myself. So AITA for telling her that I didn't want to be her backup anymore. Kronk La Sorda said, she's ghosting me completely. Good riddance. She's been treating you like a backup, fine, and she finally let it slip out loud. Ignore your mom and find a new friend, NTA. OP responded with a thank you. And then we have lots of comments telling her, yeah, that girl is taking your friendship for granted. You were right to point it out. Friendships aren't transactional. And it's time for her to make new friends. She's outgrown her. And then one commenter said, isn't it funny how you're dramatic and selfish when calling her out on being both of those things? Absolutely, y'all. That's the thing about some people. At what point do they just think to themselves, I'm gonna show you how I really feel about myself, but tell you that's how I feel about you. Bless OP's heart. I hope she found better friends. Tea parties, something that little kids love to have. Making mud pies, drinking water with no flavor, but they don't care. It's a tea party and they get to dress up. This really got me thinking. Well, where did tea parties originate? So I did some research. We know tea came from China originally, but the first tea party was hosted in England. That makes a lot of sense, actually. In 1662, the wife of King Charles II, Catherine, hosted the first ever tea party on record, and this was following her marriage. She was originally a Portuguese princess born into the noble house of her father, King John IV of Portugal. Now, as a wedding gift to the lovely couple, the Portuguese royal family gave her a casket full of tea. Queen Catherine's popularity in England did have a rocky start, and she was quite different from the modern one of the time. But she was queen, so it was influential, and her love for tea soon spread to her royal court and beyond. Tea continued to be enjoyed by nobility throughout the 17th century. Around the turn of the 18th century, though, coffee houses began to open throughout England and made both coffee and tea more accessible to the public. Tea parties, in particular, rose in popularity throughout the 19th and 20th century. From the very beginning, they were notorious for being elegant and elaborate. So you know that you're always thinking, I have to dress up, I have to look nice, I have to do all these things because it's a tea party. And it's true. They had very strict protocols that covered the tea itself, in addition to the food, tableware, guest list, and fashion. That shouldn't surprise anybody. As the tea itself became more accessible, some tea parties became more relaxed and informal. And this led to the creation of a second type of tea party. So the distinction now was either afternoon tea or high tea. Afternoon tea was distinguished by Anna Maria Russell, the Duchess of Bedford, in the 1840s as a formal gathering that served tea in addition to pastries, tea sandwiches, and other delicacies. High tea, on the other hand, was served a bit later in the day and included a selection of heartier foods, such as meats, eggs, and breads. And though it may deceive you, high tea was catered towards working class, while afternoon tea was reserved for those of a higher social status, which makes sense to debate. You see what they had at this high tea versus afternoon tea. High tea had the foods that would fill you up. Afternoon tea was a snack. So afternoon tea, the more, influential one, the more dressier one, became an essential part of English culture. And that was especially in London society during the Georgian and Victorian eras. Excuse me. The tea parties were specifically catered towards women and very important to their social status. The act of hosting a tea party was seen as a great honor, and women of importance would use these parties to impress guests with their gowns, fine china, and etiquette. Yes, you were pretty much just putting yourself on show. See what I have, see how I look, see what my chef and cook did for you, basically. While England still reigns as the queen of tea parties per se, tea parties have gained traction in other parts of the world as well. Japan, China, and Morocco all practice traditional tea ceremonies that are similar to tea parties in the sense that hosting and serving tea is seen as an important role. Iran opened its own rendition of a tea house called, yeah, I can't pronounce that, guys. I will post the link though, and you can, because I'll butcher that name. So they opened their own rendition of a tea house in the late 1800s. Russia began to strongly brew tea for a Zavarka in the 1920s, And here in the United States, tea time tradition stems from the British influence of colonial times. Although tea is still loved and enjoyed in the U.S., it was also used to fuel the American Revolution during the famous Boston Tea Party in 1773. During these revolutionary times, coffee was favored as a patriotic drink, but in truth, it now comes down to personal taste. I am personally going to take the tea over coffee because I don't like coffee, unless it's a shot of good Cuban coffee, which is basically just mostly sugar with some espresso. But that's just me. Coffee versus tea preferences aside, some of the most notable tea parties in the United States have been hosted by the first ladies, mirroring the role of women in early London society. Whether the tea party is for international guests or the incoming first lady, many of these American recipes and traditions are recorded in the White House cookbook. Now, you have to wonder, well, what's the history and the etiquette of afternoon tea? Yeah, you should know that there's going to be rules, y'all. Buttercups, there are rules. So, there are many ideas about tea etiquette and the when and the how tea was first made popular in England. Charles II grew up in exile and was exposed to the custom of drinking tea. So when he married Catherine, who was Portuguese and also enjoyed tea, that was the preferred beverage of the time. She had grown up drinking it, and so had he. So when she arrived in England to marry Charles II in 1662, she brought that casket of tea. She became known as England's first tea drinking queen. So in England, now she has invited her friends into her bedroom chamber to share her tea with her. In the 18th century, it was custom for highborn ladies to receive callers with their morning tea while still lounging in bed. Queen Anne drank tea so regularly that she substituted a large bell-shaped silver teapot for the tiny Chinese teapots. The earliest tea service dates from her reign. So, y'all, she didn't just do, I like, tea, I'm just going to drink it one. Nah, she was a tea drinker, so she had to get a bigger teapot. It just wasn't enough. So, coffee for men, tea for ladies. So, coffee houses were popular in the 18th century. Women were forbidden to enter them. In 1675, members of the government persuaded Charles II to suppress them as centers of sedition. The men were so outraged that the king canceled the proclamation. Coffee houses were also called penny universities in reference to the conversation they bred and the penny admittance fee. So basically, coffee houses, ladies were supposed to drink tea, men drank coffee, and it was just another way to keep women out of the club. Surprise, surprise. Tea gardens. Now, the 18th century is when tea gardens became popular. The whole idea of the garden was for ladies and gentlemen to take their tea together outdoors surrounded by entertainers. They attracted everybody, including Mozart and Handel. The tea gardens made tea all the more fashionable to drink, plus they were important places for men and women to meet freely. And there were a lot of chaperones, if you will, because they were in public, so they couldn't really probably do anything that was untoward at the time. Now, while drinking tea as a fashionable event is credited to Catherine, the actual taking of tea in the afternoon developed sometime later 1830s and 1840s. Jane Austen hints of afternoon tea as early as 1804 in an unfinished novel. Thank you, Jane Austen. Again, you gave us Darcy and Mr. Bingley, so I'm good. Afternoon tea tradition. So we know that afternoon tea tradition was established by Anne, the Duchess of Bedford. She requested that light sandwiches be brought to her in the late afternoon because she had a sinking feeling during that time because of the long gap before meals. Excuse me. She began to invite others to join her and thus became the tradition. Apparently, Anne, Duchess of Bedford, was a snacker. And I totally can relate to that because I don't know how they felt back in the day, but being hangry probably did not work to their advantage. Okay? She was like, forget it, give me a snack. Thank you. Now, you asked, where's the etiquette? Well, here are the rules, my friends. So, just like the royalty and upper class in the original tea parties, it is important to use proper etiquette when attending a formal tea party. Here are a few tea party etiquettes to remember. After sitting down, you put your purse on your lap or behind you against the chair back. All right, I mean, I do that when I go places, but cool. Unfold napkin and make sure to place it on your lap. If you must leave the table temporarily, place the napkin on your chair. Never blot or wipe your lipstick with a linen or cloth napkin. Lipstick stains rarely come out of the wash. Okay, so put the napkin on the nap and yeah. All right, so don't wear red lipstick, I guess. Never, ever use your napkin as a handkerchief. Please excuse yourself from the table and go to the ladies' room. The hostess will signal the end of the tea by picking up her napkin. Everyone else will then pick up their napkin by the center and loosely lay it to the left of their plate. Wait, so the end of the tea, basically she puts her napkin by the center and you just have to follow suit. Cool, cool. Go with the flow, I guess. Sugar is placed in your teacup first, then thinly sliced lemon. If you like to have milk in your tea, add it after the tea is poured. At one time, it was traditional to pour milk in the cup before the tea. This was done to prevent the glaze on the delicate teacups from cracking. We do not have that problem today, so add the milk after the tea so you can judge how much you to use based on the color change. Never use milk and lemon together. All right, I get it, but I'm already telling you right now, I don't think I could have a formal tea party with someone who is this intense. Hold the handle of the teacup using your thumb and your first one or two fingers. There is no need to stick out your pinky. This is an exaggeration of how people sometimes tilt their pinky upwards to balance the cup. Do not loop your fingers to the teacup handle or cradle the side or bottom with your hands. A guest should look into the teacup when drinking, never over it. Sheesh. Man, I'm glad that I'm not born in that time and have to do that. When stirring your tea, be careful not to clink your spoon against the cup. Gently swish the spoon back and forth without touching the sides of the cup. When through stirring, remove the spoon and place it on the saucer behind the teacup and to the right of the handle. Of course, never take a drink of your tea without removing the spoon first, and please never sip from the spoon. Okay. Okay, cool. I guess. Take small, quiet sips of your tea. Do not blow on the tea if it is too hot. Okay, okay. When you are not drinking tea, place the cup on the saucer. If seated at afternoon tea, never pick up the saucer. If standing, you may lift the saucer with the cup. So wait, if I'm sitting down, don't pick up the saucer. If I'm standing up, pick up the saucer. Cool, cool. Just clarifying. It is fine to eat most of your foods with your fingers, taking small bites. However, use a fork when trying to eat messy foods. Scones are a traditional part of proper tea. Split the scone with a knife. Since the knife is now used, either your place it what? Since the knife is now used, either place it to rest or lay it gently on the side of your plate. Jam and curds is usually placed on the scone and then topped off with a dollop of clotted cream. Simply spoon a small amount of jam or curds on your plate, as well as some of the clotted cream. Spread the jam, curds, and clotted cream onto your scone. Never use a serving spoon for this task. Okay, alright. Be sure to take small bites. Since attending a tea is a social occasion and will want to participate in the conversation without always having a full mouth. Chew and swallow completely before taking a sip of tea, since it is hot and is not meant to wash the food down. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like I would suffocate in a formal tea party. I get it. Take small bites, take small sips. Don't be too loud. Don't. I get it. But, out of curiosity, to what degree? To what degree am I supposed to be delicate? What if I am not a delicate person? What if I'm loud and out there and brash? Just saying. Just saying. To those of you who can have a formal tea party, congratulations. And to those of you who say that is not me, that is cool. Have your own version. Be loud. I would chill, take a bite, smaller bites, not huge bites, and, chew with your mouth closed and that before you talk. But, I mean, that's just normal etiquette. That's not proper, tea etiquette. But I hope you all find some way to celebrate a tea party. Now, whether it's tea or something a little bit harder, maybe a spirit or so, enjoy yourselves. And let's thank Queen Catherine and Charles II for their contribution to our original tea party.